I'm an associate professor in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Cornell, and my research really focuses on water quality. I have a lot of synergistic interests, I think, with the people in this room with respect to water quality, contamination of water, and perhaps protection of Cayuga Lake. And so the theme for tonight is PFAS. And John asked me to deliver a presentation that would address a few topics. And so I've organized this presentation around 4 questions. So I'm gonna try to answer 4 questions that I'm going to also pose for all of you tonight. So the first question is what is PFAS? We have to all be on the same page here. So PFAS is a class of chemicals. They look something like this, and don't worry, there's not going to be a lot of chemistry in this presentation, but I feel like I need to at least show one chemical structure here at the beginning. So a PFAS is essentially a fluorinated organic molecule. And if you don't remember from your organic chemistry classes, essentially this little highway here in the middle is a chain of carbon atoms. And to those carbon atoms are attached fluorine atoms. And then there's something else happening over here. And so these are characteristic features of PFAS. And to answer this question, what are PFAS? The first point I want to make is that PFAS are actually a class of chemicals. It's not one chemical. And there's a lot of debate over what a PFAS actually is. And so the Organization of Economic, I don't remember what the C stands for, Cooperation and Development, OECD. This is an international organization of 38 nations that put forward definitions about things. They say that PFAS are fluorinated substances, so those are those F atoms, that contain at least one fully fluorinated methyl or methylene carbon atom. Can you go backwards? So any molecule that has just one carbon atom that has these fluorines attached to it is in principle defined as a PFAS now by the OECD. If we take that definition and apply it to the known chemistry of the world, can anybody make a guess as to how many PFAS there might actually be?
20,000.
Over 1,000? 20,000. I got 20,000. 40,000. Anybody want to go higher than 40,000? 40,000? Okay, if it's the Price is Right, I mean, everybody's definitely below the bid.
Oh my God.
It's a class of chemicals. It's not one chemical, it's a class of chemicals. And if we use the OEC definition, which is an international standard, 6 million and some other 1,000 chemical structures. So really a lot. This is derived from a database of chemicals that you can find online. It's called PubChem, and you can just query PubChem and hone in on certain chemical features. Fortunately, some of you are a lot closer to the number of PFAS that we actually are concerned with respect to water quality. It's closer to about 5,000, at least with what we know today in 2023. It's about 5,000 chemicals that we're curious about with respect to water quality. That's still a lot. It's not one chemical, it's about 5,000 chemicals. And really interesting thing, like fluorine is a very, very, very interesting element. You know, you probably know about fluoride. When you go to the dentist, they give you a fluoride treatment. It protects your teeth. Some water utilities in the US even put fluoride in the drinking water to help protect teeth. But fluorine becomes a different animal when you connect it to carbon. When it becomes organic fluorine, it's totally different. And actually, nature doesn't really make organic fluorine molecules. People who go around the world studying weird things in the rainforests and all over the place look for like natural products, and you can count the number of naturally occurring organic fluorine molecules on one hand. There's like a sponge that lives like deep in the Atlantic Ocean that secretes like every once in a while a fluorinated amino acid. Otherwise, these are man-made molecules. The point I'm trying to make here is that these are 5,000 or 6 million man-made molecules. We made these things. So what would make anyone want to make a fluorinated molecule? Does anybody know what PFAS are useful for? Why they made 6 million different PFAS over the last 80 years?
It was one of the horror in eggs.
Okay, to avoid the horrors of having an egg stick to a pan. that is one practical use of Teflon. Flame retardant, right. Okay, so you're hitting on some of the key things. So this carbon-fluorine bond, that really doesn't exist naturally. It's unbelievably strong. It's unbelievably strong. It's the strongest single bond in chemistry. And it's also such a unique substance. You remember the phrase maybe from chemistry in the past, like dissolves like things that are similar to each other kind of like mix well with each other. It's like unlike everything. So it repels water, and it repels grease, and it repels fat, and it repels everything. And so it has these really, really unique properties such that people made 6 million different ones, and most of them, fortunately for those 6 million, are just described in the patent literature. So when you screen the patent literature, everybody's discovering new ways to put fluorine on molecules in writing a patent. 5,000 is about the products that are in commerce. And these are the things that they're used for. So they're incredibly strong. And so they're used in firefighting foams. They can extinguish jet fuel. If jet fuel is on fire, you can use aqueous film-forming foams, is what they call them, AFFF. The key ingredient is PFAS. And it's not one. It's usually hundreds of different PFAS in a mixture that they spray on these fires. Anywhere where they do fire training exercises, airports, fire stations, they're likely to have AFFF in storage if they're not doing these types of training exercises. They enable water repellency. So textiles, your clothes, your waterproof shoes, your raincoats, the couch that you may have purchased because you could spill a glass of red wine on it and the red wine just slides right off. It's PFAS. Food packaging, fast food packaging, where there's going to be a lot of grease and you don't want that packaging to get wet. It's coated with PFAS. Pizza boxes. One of the things here's our egg, our frying pan. One of the things that I was most disturbed about when I found out, or when the light bulb went off, was when I needed to buy dental floss the other day. And I was like, oh, I'm out of dental floss. And then I was like, wait a minute, that dental floss kind of slides a little bit too easily between my teeth. I bet you it's PFAS, and sure enough, it was PFAS. So I had to find a brand of dental floss that wasn't coated with PFAS. So they're used in a lot of products. That's why there's so many of them. And that's why so many people have invented them. 6 million have been invented. So the second question I want to answer is, how do PFAS end up in our water? So now we understand what a PFAS is. How do PFAS end up in our water? Well, if we think about the products that contain PFAS that I showed on the previous slide, first and foremost, we have direct application in the environment. Anywhere where they're doing fire training activities, we're directly applying PFAS at very, very high levels, just directly to the environment. And of course, it's just going to percolate down. Eventually, it's going to end up in the soil, in the groundwater underneath that site. So that's kind of an obvious one. But when I'm done using my dental floss at night, or some of those other products, maybe a pizza box or something like that, maybe it goes into the trash and it goes to a landfill. Somebody just told me earlier tonight that 40% of what goes to a landfill is packaging materials, and my guess is that a significant fraction of those packaging materials contain PFAS. And as it rains, leachate percolates down through a landfill and gets into the groundwater. Wastewater treatment plants, you may have noticed the roll of toilet paper on the previous slide, loaded with PFAS. Cosmetics, loaded with PFAS. When we wash our clothes, it gets into the wash water and it goes down the drain. All of those things that go down the drain end up at the wastewater treatment plant. Some of those PFAS might stick to the biosolids, and then we have to be careful about land application of those biosolids in agriculture. Some of those PFAS will not stick to those biosolids and will pass right through untreated into the receiving water. So, and then we also have industry. So there's a variety of industries that use PFAS for ways that we don't even want to try to understand. And those industries also have emissions associated with them, of course. And so these are all of the ways that PFAS can get into our water. So I'll let your eyes adjust to this map, but I have an undergraduate student working in my lab this summer doing some GIS mapping, and I asked him to put together this map just this morning. Here's Cayuga Lake. Obviously, we're just standing right down here at the bottom of it, and there's a bunch of symbols on here. And these symbols are what I show on the previous slide as being like key sources of PFAS. So airports, all these little airplane symbols are different airports around the Finger Lakes. These are fire stations. These little red flames are fire stations. The triangles are wastewater treatment plants. The diamonds are landfills, and the squares are chemical storage facilities, some of which may not store PFAS, some of which might store PFAS. And so, from my view, in a very rough and crude way, this map kind of highlights some of the key sources of PFAS that might end up resulting in PFAS in Cayuga Lake. Okay, go back one. Okay, so the first question was, what is a PFAS? Hopefully I answered that. Second question was, how do PFAS get in the water? Hopefully that's a little bit clearer now. The third question that John asked me to address was, what are the risks? So when we talk about risks of chemicals, we often refer to PBT. So chemicals that are persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic, those have inherent risk. Persistent means they stick around once they're in the environment. Bioaccumulative means that they tend to accumulate inside of biological tissues, and toxic means that it has a negative effect when it accumulates in those tissues. So, as we can imagine, I already said that carbon-fluorine bond is so strong. PFAS are extremely persistent. They can survive jet fuel. They can survive a jet-fueled fire. So PFAS are very persistent. So that one, there's no question. When it comes to bioaccumulative, it becomes very interesting from a science perspective, because this idea of PBT kind of emerged in the era where the pollutants of concern were like PCBs and PAHs and like DDT, the insecticide. And those are all very hydrophobic molecules, meaning they don't like to be in water. They're lipophilic, meaning they like to accumulate in fat tissue. And so usually when we think of bioaccumulative, we think of things accumulating in fat. And that makes a lot of sense. PFAS is changing the way we think about bioaccumulation. These are the locations in the human body where PFAS are known to accumulate. So it's not in fat, it's in vital organs. It's in our brains, it's in our blood, it's in our liver, and it's in our kidneys. There's been studies from all around the world where, they take blood samples that have been collected over the years from national populations. The one I'm thinking of at the moment is Germany. And something like more than 95% of the people have measurable concentrations of PFAS in their blood. So almost all of us in this room very likely have PFAS in our bodies right now, likely in our blood. So these are very troublesome locations where PFAS accumulate. They accumulate here because their chemical structure is so different from other sort of classical legacy pollutants that we're normally concerned with. So that's persistence, we understand. Bioaccumulation, we understand. Toxicity. This is an excellent paper. This is an academic paper, but the figure is really very informative. The thing I like most about this is that they use solid lines to address, toxic outcomes that with high certainty, and then dashed ones to say lower certainty. So maybe it does cause this effect as well. And so we can see with high certainty, exposure to PFAS can cause testicular cancer, kidney cancer, liver damage, increased cholesterol levels, and thyroid disease. There's also a lot of evidence that PFAS in pregnant women can be passed on to their child in utero, and with high certainty lead to delayed mammary gland development, reduced response to vaccines, and lower birth weights. So those are health outcomes that have been proven. There's really no debate about that anymore. Lower certainty means we think that they probably also cause these other effects, including things like breast cancer, bowel diseases, obesity, etc. So there are known health effects that are of significant concern when it comes to exposure to PFAS. So the risks are, they're persistent, they're bioaccumulative, and they're toxic. So much so that the US EPA has acknowledged this and recognized this, but if you have to, as much as we want more action, we have to think a little bit from in their shoes. So yeah, I've already convinced you that, there's 5,000 things that we need to regulate. I think it's a great step forward that in March of this year, the EPA finally proposed national primary drinking water regulation for 6 PFAS. So this is essentially EPA acknowledging the risk and recognizing that they need to protect the people of the United States from exposure to PFAS in drinking water. So these 6 are now regulated. These first 2, PFOA and PFOS, those are the ones that get the most attention, but remember there are 5,000. The regulated limits for drinking water for those 2 is now 4 parts per trillion. So 4 parts per trillion is incredibly low, and that reflects the EPA's perspective on how toxic they are when you're exposed to them, that they would set a threshold at 4 parts per trillion. The other 4 are a little bit higher, and they're actually being regulated as a class using a hazard index approach that is a little bit more complicated. It's not really, there's no easy way to explain how those are being regulated. And then I have these 4 letters and a number at the bottom. Does anybody know what this means? What is this UCMR5? Anybody heard of that? Okay, this is also a great thing from the EPA. This is the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. So this is a rule that the EPA has the 5th version of it. They're usually, I think, 4 or 5 year cycles where they identify emerging contaminants of concern, and they say, okay, every water utility in the US that serves more than 3,500 people has to monitor for these unregulated contaminants at least once a year for the next 5 years. They then take that data and make decisions like this. So these PFAS were on UCMR3, and they're now being regulated. UCMR5 has about 30 additional PFAS, so not 3,000, but 30. So they're moving the needle towards this. I feel the need to mention here also that there is a paradigm that, hey, why don't we regulate this as a class? And that also has some traction globally, I would say. And there are techniques available to do that, but I think that the United States isn't considering that seriously at the moment. I'd be happy to answer questions about that, but for the moment, this is what we're working with. So, okay, what's a PFAS? We know. How does it get into the water? We know. What are the risks? We know. There's one more, 4th question. What can we do about it? How can we manage this risk? So fortunately, people in my field have been studying this problem with increasing frequency I've been studying this since about 2016 or 2017, and I was relatively late to the game. I have colleagues that have been studying this for 15 or 20 years, and there are technologies that are emerging now that can help address this problem. So I first want to talk about PFAS destruction. PFAS destruction would sort of be the ideal approach. This would be PFAS in, no PFAS out. Like absolutely no PFAS out. And there's been so many technologies studied and evaluated, and there's so many drawbacks for so many technologies. These aren't perfect technologies, but they do have some value. So I'm showing here 2 in particular. The one on the left is electrochemical water treatment. The one on the right is called plasma treatment. And both of these technologies can take water with PFAS in, and what comes out is water without PFAS. The data here is supposed to be proving that in sort of just a very quick summary. And this is sort of what the infrastructure looks like. These technologies are appropriate for, let's say, Department of Defense military facilities that have been spraying AFFF at the same site for like decades. These technologies are appropriate when the PFAS concentrations are so overwhelmingly high that these technologies actually have some efficacy. This is not appropriate for, say, cleaning Cayuga Lake, which may or may not have PFAS in it at all. So that's PFAS destruction. The other approach is PFAS removal. So this is like processes that can basically scoop PFAS from the water, like using activated carbon. Or you can imagine if you have like a sponge that it has some kind of special chemistry, and then you have PFAS contaminated water, you put the sponge in, all the PFAS go into the sponge, and then you remove the sponge and the water's clean. That's what I mean by PFAS removal. This picture is actually from Hoosick Falls. So this is a site in New York State. Many of you might be aware of the situation in Hoosick Falls. The groundwater in Hoosick Falls was contaminated by a fluorochemical manufacturing facility owned by St. Gobain. And St. Gobain actually funded this. This is basically in addition to the drinking water treatment plant in Hoosick Falls. These are just gigantic activated carbon tanks. So think of these as just gigantic Brita filters, like gigantic Brita filters that can do the job. Of course, they don't last forever. They actually don't last very long. And of course, you're not really destroying the PFAS. You're just moving them from the water to carbon, and now you have to deal with the carbon. But it does serve as a means for communities to treat the water now as technologies are continuing to develop. The last slide I have is, well, what can I do at home? I think that I live near one of those sites that you had on your map, and maybe I have PFAS in my drinking water. I want to assure you from the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule, if you're served by a drinking water plant that serves more than 3,500 people, your water treatment plant is doing certified PFAS testing this year. And they will report that in your annual consumer confidence report, and they will do that for the next 5 years. So you'll have very reliable data if you are served by a municipal drinking water plant that serves more than 3,500 people. I reviewed a paper just in the last couple of weeks leading up to this, because I wanted to provide this last slide, like what can we do as individuals if we're concerned about this problem. And this paper reviewed dozens and dozens of options of point-of-use water treatment, from your countertop pitchers to the carbon block in your refrigerator, to whole house treatment systems, and so on. And what they found was that 2 technologies were clearly superior for the removal of PFAS, like unequivocally superior. One is what's known as a two-stage filter, a two-stage under-sink filter. If you went to any of the local home improvement stores, you could find this. Products like this, they're just called two-stage under-sink filters. They basically remove PFAS through special materials in these 2 tanks. The other one is a reverse osmosis system, which can also be installed under sink or somewhere in the house, and works by means of reverse osmosis. And so when comparing, again, dozens and dozens of technologies and commercial products, these 2, according to this paper in a very reputable scientific journal, these 2 kind of are the cream that rises to the top when it comes to PFAS removal from tap water. By the way, these were tested in North Carolina. So North Carolina is a state that is heavily impacted by PFAS contamination due to fluorochemical manufacturing and textile production. And so these were tested actually on homeowners in North Carolina's tap water. And they found that these 2 products were the best for that situation. So that's what I prepared. I'm sorry if I took longer than the allotted time. Sometimes I just my mouth starts moving and whatever. But I hope I answered 4 questions. Question 1, what are PFAS? I hope you know the answer. Question 2, how can PFAS get in my water? Question 3, what are the risks? And question 4, what can we do about it? I hope that you can take those 4 messages away from me.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Damien Helbling. So next we'll have some updates from a lot of our local water groups. They will be updating us on the work that they're doing, not necessarily related to PFAS, but if they are working on PFAS, we'll hear about that too. First we have Bill Foster with Discover Cayuga Lake. If you'd like.
You guys all hear me? I'll just try to project if I can. So first I want to thank Queen for doing this. And I just, you know, in the introduction there were words like strengthening our collective impact. You know, and
Actually, could you use the mic?
okay.
Sorry.
Sure, I just like to roam as I speak sometimes. So, you know, I just wanted to say I want to thank Clean for organizing this and using words like strengthening our collective impact and bringing us all together. Because, you know, as I look out at the lake today and the way it looks this year, I mean, I've spent years telling people, oh, every year it's different. I'm starting to feel like or every year it's, you know, different things come up and they go away and it's fine. But this year I'm seeing, I don't know, the lake looks like it needs some help. Looking at the air quality today, we all need to work together. We need to find ways to reinforce each other's actions and our efforts and really, really come together because we're not doing well enough. And so thank you for bringing this together, at least I'm, you know, here on this local level. So my name is Bill Foster. I'm with Discover Cayuga Lake. If anybody doesn't know what Discover Cayuga Lake is, I guess I want to begin with the idea that started the whole thing like 20 years ago when we became the floating classroom. The guy that really kind of brought the idea together, he asked a question: what if everybody could enjoy Cayuga Lake? You know, and the Finger Lakes are surrounded by private property. There are expensive properties around the lake. There are boats on the lake. Access is not a universal thing, for sure. And how can we expect people to care about these beautiful waterways if they're not really part of their life? So that whole question, what if everybody could enjoy Cayuga Lake? That still instructs us today. And so 5 years ago, we brought our own boat on the water. At this point, we run an ecotourism program on Cayuga Lake, May through October. So if you see that big boat out there, sometimes it's making noise. There are people narrating on it. There are DJ cruises. We're trying to pull in tourism revenue so we can bring that back and offer educational programs and community access programs, either for free or for low cost. Okay, so the ecotourism, that pays for that. And we're trying to explore, what does ecotourism look like when you don't have a coral reef or a rainforest that people are traveling around the world to come to. But we have beautiful resources here and we have a community that needs to be engaged and supported. So that's what we're trying to do. So we bring a lot of people onto the water. As I mentioned, we do DJ cruises and things like that to make sure we bring a broader audience than is here tonight onto the water, all right, just to get out there and to enjoy, and maybe they come back and learn something afterwards. So with our ecotourism revenue, what we bring in, we do offer community cruises. We have a whole suite of those, from family eco cruises where we have younger caregivers or younger learners and caregivers coming out to the lake just to hear stories and do some science and explore the lake themselves with their family. We have community cruises on Wednesday night. Those are donation-based as well. They're free. We want to make sure anybody can come out. We hope they'll support our program, but that's a matter of whether they're able to or not. They can be there to begin with. We have volunteer lake monitoring cruises on Sunday. We have our DJ cruises on Sunday evening for reduced prices. We do a floating classroom program that brings 2,500 students onto the lake every year. We do some other programs. We do travel in the classroom in schools to get kids in touch with waterways. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell. We don't do a whole lot with PFAS yet, but really it's about education and access and making sure that everybody feels like these waterways are part of their life so that they have the impetus to get involved and to care. So I didn't really prepare anything. I wanted to kind of go through answer a couple of the questions. I covered our background, I think. As far as, you know, what are we currently working on? We are still working on community access and engagement. We are trying as many programs as we can to make sure that people from every aspect of this community make it out onto the lake. And we feel like we're actually making some progress there. So that's a wonderful thing. We are working on pollution prevention. You know, we are trying to collaborate with as many different organizations as possible. as we get people out onto the lake. So, one of the things we've actually got a collaborative project with the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network on pollution prevention, and we've introduced pollution prevention to a lot of our educational curriculum at this point. And this year we're kind of focusing, the smoke in the air. The first we got on the water, I think our first days in the water, all of our programs are canceled because of air quality. There's an opportunity there though, because now, we can talk to everybody about maybe slightly abstract pollution problems that seem to go away, that seem to go to some other part of the world, but it's coming back to us now. We can see the impact of our actions through things like air quality. It's coming back to the northeastern United States. We're not in a bubble anymore, so maybe that's an opportunity. So that's one of the things that we're working on, is how do we use these opportunities to really teach people and get people thinking about, well, we now live in the Anthropocene era. So, we're living with our own impacts here. We have a direct connection. We can't get away from what we do. So our consumer choices, now we have an opportunity to really talk about that and have conversations. The other thing we're working on, along with those things, I think, is trying to understand how we talk to people and educate children and adults about this age we live in. It's not just climate change, it's all these other impacts. We have a program called the Watershed Internship Program. We have our own interns. We actually work now and support interns from a number of other organizations. And one of the really beautiful things that's coming out of that is we're talking with young adults about their viewpoint as they approach adulthood and think about how they want to be community environmental leaders and things like that. What are the challenges they feel like they're facing? How do they perceive that? And that helps us try to begin to understand how we can speak to others about this. It opens at 58 years old, I have these ideas I've been forming for a while, so I need to hear what other people and younger people are thinking about this. And so that's something that we're focusing on, is how do we educate about this changing planet that we live on, this changing environment. Because as I've seen it, I grew up in an environment that evolved more slowly than I did. And I think the next generation is not going to have that luxury. I think the climate's going to be evolving on a rapider scale, and they're going to have to deal with that. So how do we teach about that? So I think that's something that's really important. As far as what we can offer, especially in terms of PFAS, I think one thing, we have a boat out there, and I'd like to say we're going to take this entire community out on the lake, 60 or 70 people at a time. And if there's a message we can help deliver, whether it's directly through our educators and narrators and interpreters, or whether it's having people come out on the boat to share information, the boat is there for you. I will offer a free cruise to do that. I will offer free cruises and if you want to celebrate something that has happened, an effort that's been successful, the boat is there. It's a platform for everybody to get out onto the water and to not only teach, but to celebrate what we need to celebrate in this community. So I will offer that, and I think I've probably said enough at this point. So I'm going to turn over the mic, and yeah.
Thank you. I've had 3 kids go through your child program and they talk about it for years later. So next we have Peter Bardaglio from TICP, Tompkins County Climate Protection Initiative. Took me a little while.
Good evening. So now you know why we call it TICP. Tompkins County Climate Protection Initiative is a mouthful, but we got started in 2008. We've been meeting monthly ever since then, looking at a range of issues related to climate change and the energy transition. We have a kind of multi-sector coalition, folks from business, the nonprofit world, education, local government, and we also put out a newsletter 6 times a year, and we do an annual report of our members' achievements. And it's the one place I think in the community where we really pull together information about what we're doing in Tompkins County to deal with climate change and how to accelerate the energy transition. We've also become much more active recently in terms of advocacy. We've been working with New York Renews, a statewide coalition, and also the Renewable Heat Now Coalition, and working with our folks in Albany on various pieces of legislation that we've been advocating for. We had a couple of successes this past session with the All-Electric Building Act and the Public Renewables Act. And I have to say that one of our great champions of this legislation is here tonight, Assemblymember Kellis, and we couldn't get... Without the support of folks like Anna, we couldn't make any kind of headway at all. So it's really terrific to have somebody representing us in Albany who actually understands these issues and is passionate about them. We also wanted to figure out, besides all the other things that we do, work on trying to bring the buildings into the picture. So we started something called the Ithaca 2030 District. It's now our flagship program. We're part of 24 districts in the US and Canada. All the other districts are much, much bigger than Ithaca. The next smallest one, I guess, is Burlington, and it's much bigger than Ithaca. But most of them are like Pittsburgh, Denver, Philadelphia, etc. But the districts all focus on trying to improve the energy and water performance of commercial buildings in downtown areas. And we are all working together on this issue, collecting data from the buildings and measuring them against benchmarks that we establish for each building. So we just put out our annual report for 2022 in May, and we were able to establish that we had energy savings of 27% among our 44 member buildings that amount to about 584,000 square feet. We also were able to generate water savings of 40%. The ultimate goal for the 2030 districts is to reduce energy and water consumption by 50% for already existing buildings, which is what we're focused on. So we think we did pretty well this year, and we're going to keep working on that. And we try to bring in new buildings every year. We've expanded about 30% over the last couple of years in terms of our total square footage. But if you know anyone who's interested in being part of that, or you own a building yourself that you would like to have join the district, please let me know, because we're always looking for new folks to bring on board. Our latest was State Theater. We were really excited to get them to join us and to start working on their energy consumption, which is a big issue for them. So that's what we're up to, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you tonight.
Thank you. Okay, Grace Mantle from Community Science Institute.
Hi everyone, my name is Grayson Scheidemantel. I'm the Executive Director of Community Science Institute. Show of hands, how many people know about Community Science Institute? Excellent, I see almost all of the hands in the room. How many people are Community Science Institute volunteers? All right, hopefully by the end of my 5 minutes, you will all want to be Community Science Institute volunteers. So Community Science Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we also own and operate a certified water testing laboratory, meaning that the water samples that are analyzed in our lab produce regulatory quality results. Our mission is to empower communities to protect water quality through volunteer stream and lake monitoring, mostly in the Cayuga Lake watershed, but in some surrounding regions as well. Our main focus and priority areas include building long-term regulatory water quality data sets for the Cayuga Lake watershed through our volunteer monitoring programs. And those include our Synoptic Stream and Lake Monitoring Program, which has been going on since 2002, starting with Fall and Virgil Creek monitoring. We also have benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring. We're joined by our biomonitoring coordinator extraordinaire tonight, Adriana. to help us understand the ecological health of our local streams. And then finally, we have our Cayuga Lake harmful algal bloom monitoring program, which we carry out in collaboration with the Watershed Network and also with some help from our friends at Discover Cayuga Lake. Our second main priority area is to make all of that data that we collect through these monitoring programs public. So anybody can access this data on our free Streams and Lakes database and our brand new, in the last month, harmful algal bloom database for Cayuga Lake. Thank you. CSI is unique in the work that we do because we're a one-stop shop for water quality monitoring. We recruit, train, and organize the volunteers. We provide the certified analyses in our state certified lab, and then we publish that regulatory quality data on our database for anybody in this room, for folks who work for municipalities, for concerned citizens, for researchers to access. And because we are this one-stop shop, we're able to collect, analyze, review, and publish water quality data much more efficiently than government agencies are, and getting that water quality information out to the public quickly and efficiently. So just a couple updates on what we're doing. Right now, a big priority for CSI is enhancing our collaborations. If you've seen me lately, I feel like I'm in a lot of meetings with a lot of folks in this room. Particularly, we're working on building our stronger relationship with the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network. We're working on some grants together. If you see Liz and I, we're very tired right now, so be nice to us, please. And finally, in 2023 and 2024, CSI will be going through its first ever strategic planning process to figure out how we can better serve the folks who live, recreate, and work in the Cayuga Lake Watershed. So you might be hearing from us soon to find out how we can help you all. Finally, in terms of PFAS, you might think CSI is an ELAP certified lab, so maybe there's testing. We do not currently hold ELAP certification for PFAS testing because the cost of the equipment and the expertise required are just beyond the scope of what our organization can offer. However, if folks are interested in having their drinking water tested, we can subcontract tests out to other labs, but I will warn you, the price is expensive. It starts at about $600 and goes all the way up to about $1,200, depending on which type of test you want to do. We have had folks reach out to us about monitoring, and at this point, because of the high cost of certified testing, it's probably not something that will be within our realm anytime soon. However, we would be willing to consider some localized monitoring, perhaps starting out with some non-certified tests, but using strict quality assurance protocols. So if anybody has any interest in that, feel free to reach out to me, info@communityscience.org. And thank you all for your attention. And thank you to Clean for organizing this.
Thank you. So we have about everybody here for Cayuga Lake Environmental Action now, but Brian Eden agreed to speak, so I'm going to pick on him.
Thanks a lot. Several of us attended the county legislature meeting tonight. There was a resolution to oppose an extension of the Seneca Meadows landfill, which is the largest in New York State. You know that we have the three largest landfills, solid waste landfills in New York, in the Finger Lakes. And the Seneca Meadows produces 66 million gallons of leachate per year, which they ship off-site, and probably to inadequate facilities to handle. It handles a lot of industrial waste from the New York City area. I think a third of New York City's waste comes here. So anyway, the short of it is that we lost the vote. We got 7 votes and 6 against, and 1 person was absent. I'm pretty sure that person would have voted for this. We needed 8 votes. So this is something that we have to bring back because this is just too important to have people who don't really understand the issue prevent us from doing something. We need to push toxics back up the hill, back towards the originator. And we did this with the packaging reduction resolution, which is 40% of what's in landfills is packaging. A lot of that is toxic mixed materials. And we were almost successful this year, but we had half the senators that supported this, but we got beaten again by the American Chemical Council. And So we're coming back, and I'll just briefly say, Clean, I mean, yeah, I don't want to take much more time, but we're mostly focused on desalinizing the lake and dealing with the emergent toxics and addressing issues of climate change. And hopefully you all stay tuned to our activities, and if we bring this issue around again, hopefully we'll get a lot of you to come out to speak on that issue. So thanks a lot, and move to the next person.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Jenna Durario from Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenna Durario. I'm an educator at Cornell Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County. Extension does a variety of educational programs in the community, youth education, the environment, I'll go every other word, as well as agriculture. Can you all still hear me? I'll wait a second. Yeah, right. Okay, where was I going with this? But I wanted to highlight one program that we're working on. It's a Payment for Ecosystem Services pilot program. You might be saying, what is a Payment for Ecosystem Services program? So a very brief summary is that they are programs which incentivize farmers or land managers to make the right decision environmentally. So it's compensating them to continue doing practices or systems that are regenerative, with the idea that farmers are taking on a lot of the extra costs in order to make those right decisions. So we're currently working with 6 pilot farmers here in the county. We've been doing field sampling on their farms for the past 2 years. So we've had volunteers go out for 3 different sessions and take a lot of soil samples, which has been really awesome to see the community come together to do that. We've been looking at metrics like increased water infiltration, improved water quality through soil health, as well as increased carbon sequestration, which all have climate mitigation effects. And we don't have a lot to do with PFAS, sorry to not really highlight that, but Payment for Ecosystem Service pilot programs really are focused on improving the environment as well as farm viability. And I would like to highlight as well that we work with mostly farmers of color and beginning farmers, with the understanding that we want any future program to really be built around them and to build, a framework that works for them before expanding outside of the 6 pilot farmer range. So really getting that nexus of environmental benefits, farm viability, as well as social benefits as well. So I'm happy to talk more with people. I know that was a pretty brief summary on it, but we do have a website page on the Extension website, and I'd be happy to talk with anyone afterwards as well. Thank you.
Okay, next we get from Cynthia Brock from the Tompkins County Water Resource Council. Oh, there you are. I'm looking around the room.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Brock. I'm the chair of the Tompkins Water Resources Council. Many of you are members or former members of the Water Resources Council, so it's great to see everybody in person. The Water Resources Council actually serves as Tompkins County's Water Quality Coordinating Committee, which is what you have in counties across New York State. Of course, we're Tompkins County, so we call it something different. We serve as an advisory board to the Tompkins County Legislature to provide technical and policy guidance on preservation, enhancement, and use of water resources. One of our primary functions is we create it's the Water Quality Strategy Report every 3 years, which sets forward priorities for water quality education and management, and provides guidance to Tompkins County in terms of policy and actions to protect and enhance our water resources. Some of our policies, priorities right now is we host an annual municipal training session that alternates between classroom and site visits. Topics include stream corridor management, wetlands, floodplain management, and aquifer recharge areas. We are updating our clean boating map to provide education of recreational resources and best practices in terms of clean boating for the entire Cayuga Lake, which is quite an impressive feat and a beautiful map if you have a chance to take a look at that. We also respond to issues and plans that come up from the state. We provide comments. I think the regulations on PFAS is something that our monitoring partnership helped to advise the Water Resources Council to submit a letter of comment regarding those proposed regulations, as well as solid waste management regulations that are coming up for public comment. I also wear another hat, which, since it was mentioned today, I'm happy to educate you on that as well. I'm the chair of the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant Board. So the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant is owned by the City of Ithaca, the Town of Ithaca, and the Town of Dryden. We have the capacity to treat 13.1 million gallons of sewage per day. We treat on average about 5.5, 6 million gallons per day. One of the main, we have a lot of capacity for development. I know many people ask about that with a lot of the development and plans that are going on in the area. One of our big challenges has to do with infiltration and inflow. As you see with these rain events, we can be inundated with stormwater into our catchment systems, and this is something that we need to address, especially since the City of Ithaca, being the older municipality, also happens to be at the bottom of the valley, and we receive a lot of that rainwater and flooding issues, which will impact our plant as well. I did ask about PFAS, and I'm happy to say, and if Jose is still here, in 2019, we started testing for PFAS at the wastewater treatment plant. We were not able to test in 2020 due to COVID, and we're not quite sure if we tested in 2021. But we did one round in 2022, and thanks to a partnership with Susan Allen at Ithaca College, as well as a Park Foundation grant, we are doing quarterly tests at the wastewater treatment plant for PFAS. These tests are expensive, as was mentioned earlier. It takes a long time to get the results. I don't think we even have the results yet. But this is something that we are looking very closely at. We have not, in my knowledge, ever land applied any of our biosolids. Initially, because of the concerns of the biological vectors and how it would impact agricultural land if the biosolids were applied. We also were very concerned about emergent contaminants before we even discovered that PFAS was an issue. So I just want to state clearly that for the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant, beneficially or unfortunately, all of our biosolids are trucked up to Seneca Meadows for disposal. We have hoped to be partners in pilot studies having to do with pyrolysis. I think we would make an ideal partner. However, this was not something that we could really conduct at the wastewater treatment plant facility. There would be additional air quality regulations and requirements that we just did not have the capacity to apply for this licensing of that. If you've seen our wastewater treatment plant, we are surrounded by recreational as well as residential uses. I don't think that that would be an appropriate place for a pyrolysis testing facility. However, if Tompkins County chose to choose another site in a central location, I think we would make a great partner for that. Yeah. That's all I have. Thank you. Yes, question?
I saw on your website that like a bad day is 30 million gallons. I run out there. What do you do with it?
Yes, when we have rain events that are sustained, we can very much be overwhelmed with inflow. I will say it says 30 million gallons per day. I think our monitor maxes out at 25 million gallons per day. So
That was on the website.
yeah, no, we let the water in and we do our best to treat it. We might, it's all about slowing the process down so that you can settle out the solids.
You have a storage tank.
No, we don't have extra storage.
Thank you. I appreciate the updates. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Sean Bossard, Director of Agriculture Operations at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell.
Thank you. It's a very cumbersome title for a logistics manager. Just to speak very briefly on what we're doing. So I oversee the research farms around campus and around the state to some extent. One of the things that we're focusing on quite heavily is climate proofing these farms. Rainfall events are a big concern right now. Soil erosion and everything that goes with it is a major concern of ours. And one of the things we were able to do was secure a little bit of funding. We're probably going to plop it in our pre-bill operation for the most part, and look at some practices that might actually provide some solid benefit to Fall Creek. That could include riparian buffers along along Fall Creek, both sides. Could include wetlands. We have water coming down the hill from other properties. It'd be nice to slow it up, filter it out. Create miniaturized wetlands to treat tile line effluent that comes out. So there's a number of different practices that we're kind of looking at. Some of these practices might very well be experimental practices, but of course that's what we're supposed to be doing there. And we can expand this onto some other farms. We have another one up in Aurora, and like I said, several across the state. But the idea is to really focus on water quality as it leaves our farms. So if we can provide some positive impact there, that's what we're doing. So we're not too worried about PFAS on our operations just yet, except for product minimization. But we're quite focused on these rainfall events and trying to protect our farms from those events, and then protecting the stream from that. So that's what we're up to.
All right, next we'll hear from Roxy Johnson from CWIO, Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization.
I'm not as old as Bill Foster, but I do have to wear glasses now. Is he still here? I'm 53, I'll just be honest about it. Okay, so, Roxy Johnson, I'm speaking on behalf of Liz Thomas, who's the chair of the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. I'm the vice chair. She was unable to be here tonight. CWIO, as we call ourselves, because just like TPIC, our name is a mouthful. CWIO was created out of a 1998 New York State Department of State Watershed Planning grant. And from that, we created the Cayuga Lake Watershed Characterization Document in 2000 and the Cayuga Lake Restoration and Protection Plan in 2001, which was updated in 2017. Our mission is to bring the 57 municipal governments together in the watershed with other agencies and stakeholder organizations to work collectively to implement good practices to monitor, protect, and restore our water resources. We do that mostly by referring to state-approved management plans like our Restoration and Protection Plan. We also lean into the DEC's HABS Action Plan for Cayuga Lake, refer to stormwater regulations, any existing drinking water source protection plans, which Dryden and the City of Ithaca both have, and I believe Ulysses is working on. And possibly in the future, we'll refer to a total maximum daily load regulation. Cleo has a lot of experience with water projects and years of experience. We work with our member municipalities to develop projects. We help them find funding and secure the funding. We also advocate for the local government. Sometimes that comes in the form of letters, and that's about the only place I can touch on PFAS right now. Recently, the state had out for public comment their solid waste and materials management plan, which by and large is an amazing document. It's looking at a circular economy, reducing waste, finding value out of some of our waste streams, but it did call for an increase in land application of biosolids, which we did not support because that's not good for local governments, it's not good for farming economies, it's not good for water and wastewater utilities. The other thing we do right now, that we started just last week, is to do outreach to our elected officials at the state level. We have started sending letters. One went to Anna Kellis's office. And we will introduce Cleo to all of our elected officials so they know what we're up to, what we bring to the table, and our 3 topics that we're going to talk about is that we would like to see the TMDL actually published and finalized so that we can use that document to be more effective when we implement projects. We would like to see more direct support of our soil and water conservation district offices. They don't have enough staff. They do a lot of the work implementing good water projects. Some of the watershed organizations like ours have watershed managers, and finding funding and keeping those people on staff is hard. We'd like to see direct support for that. And finally, we'd like to see the grant process or accessing to grant funds simplified. I know recently the Finger Lakes Hub released $350,000, and we found out non-for-profits are having a very hard time even applying for it because there's this roadblock to get onto the software that allows you to apply. And so, presuming you have that already, then there are usually reimbursements, so small municipalities might have to front $500,000 through the life of the project and get reimbursed. They don't have it. Things like that. So that's our most recent effort, and so I look forward to seeing you again, possibly Ann Kellis. Thank you for being here tonight. And also thank you all for being here, and thank you, Clean, for organizing this. From the Environmental Management Council.
Here we go, the stragglers of the evening. Thank you guys for all staying. My name is Kate Darfler. I'm the chair of the Tompkins County Environmental Management Council, which I see a lot of faces, previous, past, and current members of the EMC. So thank you guys. The EMC is kind of an interesting organization compared to the other ones you've seen tonight. We are an advisory board to the Tompkins County Legislature, but we also have a system of where we have representatives from all the municipalities. So who sit on their conservation boards of their municipalities, and we all come together and share and learn and pass ideas back and forth. So you can think of the EMC as sort of a nexus between all of the different municipalities. And then we also have people who sit on most of the nonprofit or other boards in the county. So we kind of hopefully are kind of a clearinghouse. We do everything from unique natural areas, protecting our UNAs. We are working on, we have climate adaptation group that's looking at flooding issues and extreme heat. And then we have an outreach group that has been putting together, and if you're not on it, the Green Scene email, which is a bi-weekly email that goes out that is supposedly a full and a comprehensive overview of all the environmental things that you could want to know about in Tompkins County. So if you're not on the list, get on it. You can find it on the EMC's website through the Tompkins County's page. It's pretty great. We have a great team that's been working on that. And the other thing that the EMC has been doing lately, which hopefully you all know about, is we have partnered with the state organization for EMCs and for CACs, which are municipal groups, which is called NISAC, which is the New York State Association of Conservation Councils or Commissions. and their annual conference is being hosted in Tompkins County. It's the first one in a number of years, and the EMC is taking a leadership role in putting it together. You will pretty much have a talk from every single person that you've seen here tonight, plus about 100 more if you come to the virtual conference. It's going to be a bimodal conference, so we're going to have 1 day of virtual talks and then 2 days of field trips. Go on a boat ride with Bill Foster is our culminating field trip out on Cayuga Lake, and get to see some pollinator gardens. Get to go all around Tompkins County. There will be a reception, hopefully, and our own Anna Kellis will be there talking about things going on in our area. So if you want to know more about that conference, the email address is NYSAC, NYSACC.net, and you can find that out, or just email me, because most of you probably have seen my emails going around somewhere about it. So hopefully you'll be hearing more about it. Registration is open for the next month for that conference. So reserve your spots on all the great field trips and hear all the great talks. And you don't have to sign up for the whole thing. You can just go to the virtual, or then you could do the whole thing if you want to. So, thank you.
Looking forward to that. Okay, next meeting is Cayuga with the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network.
Thanks, Stephanie. So the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network is a 25-year-old nonprofit organization, and simply put, our mission is to advocate for the health of Cayuga Lake and its watershed in a changing world. And the challenges that our watershed faces obviously come in many forms, right? There's climate change, land use change, invasive species, and pollution. And so while that new simplified mission may be kind of short and sweet, obviously the work is still very challenging. And to rise to those challenges, our vision has always been a network of individuals, institutions, and communities from throughout the entire Cayuga Lake watershed, particularly including Seneca County and Cayuga County, united in protecting the water resources for people and nature. So I wish that Liz Thorndike was still here. She stopped by earlier. She's a founding member of the network, and I just heard the story told from her how in 1998, around the same time that the Keynote was founded, the network was organized as, this grassroots organization, because she and others from particularly the three water shoreline counties realized that there was no organization for Cayuga Lake representing the interests of our entire watershed community. We were a little bit behind relative to our neighbors, so that is part of the story of the founding of the network. And so our work includes three really important tasks: education, engagement, and advocacy. And the first two are particularly critical to doing the latter effectively, right? So we keep really busy organizing 2 free community conferences each year, as well as on-demand events related to current interests. An example would be lake levels and climate change. And we maintain an information website, produce 2 to 4 print publications, network newsletters each year, maintain an email list of over 1,000 people, of members as well as community members. That's a free public listserv, and are actively getting the word out about important and fun watershed events on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So I want to point out that those communications tools are here and available to tell the important stories of water quality, climate change, land use change, pollution, invasive species, all of these priority areas throughout our watershed. So please, if you have an important story to share, I'd love to talk to you and push that out through some of our outlets there. And we also like to serve as this connector or liaison between the lakeshore counties. So I serve on the water quality groups for each of the counties and attend those, as well as the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance meetings. So as much as I can be relaying information, from that broader audience or from our community to our partners throughout the Finger Lakes, that's my goal there. So we also provide and promote volunteer opportunities through watershed-wide cleanups, our lake-friendly living program, and climate change context for that. the pollution prevention work we're doing with Discover Cayuga Lake, the HABS monitoring program in partnership with CSI, hydrilla information and action, and we have several committees that are focused on specific program areas that have grown in interest, that's climate change and water quality. And very importantly and relevant to tonight's conversation, we develop science-backed positions on issues of concern to the watershed community. So there are 16 formal comments and positions which have been submitted to government agencies and our representatives since 2012, which are published on our website. So I'd like to point you towards those as resources. Those positions are developed based on the expertise contributed by network staff, board members, community volunteers. John serves on our issues committee and brings a lot of good information to us in that liaison position with Clean. So let's see, and some highlights from within the last year include requesting completion of the TMDL in partnership with CUIO, support for the restrictions of sales of neonicotinoid-coated seeds in New York State, which are really problematic for aquatic macroinvertebrates and aquatic health. And also, relevant to this theme, we recently submitted 2 comments in response to requests from the DEC, one on that draft New York Solid Waste Management Plan, and the second on the interim strategies for biosolids recycling in New York State. And in summary to those comments, we emphatically disagree with increasing the rate of biosolids application in New York State to 57%, and request that the state suspend all land application of wastewater treatment sludge until it can be effectively tested and determined free of PFAS contamination, and that along with these new requirements, there has to be lots and lots of funding to help our local wastewater treatment facilities and researchers get to the point where we can remove it from the waste stream, and that containing that waste in certain locations where it can be treated is our best hope for doing that. So looking forward, I'm really interested in partnering with our regional PFAS experts and other organizations with shared interests around this, with special attention to including Seneca and Cayuga counties in this conversation and bringing some of this really great information that's been shared here tonight to them. Let's see, our issues committee, hosted by George Adams here in HAT, meets monthly, and we would welcome anyone who's interested in participating in these conversations to come and join us and help George out too, because he's been...
especially for the chemists.
Yeah, he would like to go play some tennis and like do some other things. He's been writing a lot lately. So yes, well, that mission is simple. The work obviously is not. And I think we just need to do more of this coordination. I think there's been a lot of good progress over the last year in figuring out how our organizations fit together and serve our communities in Watershed, within county boundaries, beyond. And so let's keep doing that. And I just want to also announce that the Watershed Network is celebrating our 25-year anniversary. So in August, we'll be having event at Sheldrake Point on August 24th. You'll see the invitation come out for that soon. I hope to see a lot of you there. It will be great to celebrate some of the milestones that have been reached along the way and the partnerships that have grown out of the work that our board and staff have done over the years. So thank you to Clean for organizing this great event, and I hope to hear from you soon. And the PFAS comments will be posted on our website tomorrow. They're not up yet. Thank you.